So here's the thing. I found myself tangled in a mess that made me question everything about my relationships, my loyalty, and honestly, even who I really am. The title? Ada, for not answering my situationship's ultimatum. It all started when I was in this cozy little bubble with Sam, my coworker, and things seemed perfect, until they weren't. Sam treated me like a goddess. He was sweet, attentive, and went out of his way to spend time with me, driving an hour and a half just to share a meal or watch a movie together. I mean, who doesn't dream of someone like that? But there was one hitch. We were just in a casual relationship. No titles, no commitments, just two people enjoying each other's company. I was fine with that. We both had strong feelings for each other, but were hesitant about committing. However, things began to change when I started hearing whispers around the office. Negative comments about Sam's work, gossip about how he wasn't performing well, and critiques about him, mostly from a group I jokingly called the Negative Nancys. I couldn't believe the lack of respect these people had, especially whenever they started launching into personal attacks on his character. But, you know what? I felt it was important to be honest with Sam about everything. I'd want him to do the same for me, right? So I told him everything I heard. At first, he took it in stride, shrugging off their comments and staying focused on his work. But slowly they began to eat away at his confidence. They were attacks on his mother's professionalism, and it became crystal clear that he wouldn't tolerate anyone saying anything negative about his family. I completely understood that feeling. If anyone said something bad about my family, I'd be equally upset. But what complicated things further was his relationship with these same Negative Nancys. I had developed friendships with them, going out for drinks, and even hanging out at their places before things got serious with Sam. While I didn't like how they treated Sam or his mom, I had cultivated these connections and didn't want to cut ties just because they liked to gossip. Now, don't get me wrong, I defended him when I could, but I would not stoop down to their level of negativity. I told Sam time and time again that I didn't partake in the gossip sessions, that these Nancys weren't my close friends by any means, and that I wouldn't stoop to their level. But each time conversations became heated, it always swirled back to the same argument. "You're not defending me," he'd shout, frustration dripping from his voice. One afternoon, I found myself sitting in my car, still parked at the office. I clutching my phone tightly, scrolling through the messages we'd exchanged earlier. I tried to replay the moment in my mind when he had ultimately thrown down the gauntlet. "If you're going to stay friends with them, we need to cut ties," he said, his mouth set into a firm line. It felt as if the wind had been knocked out of me. My heart raced. An ultimatum? Really? I felt drained, torn between these two worlds. One was full of care and adoration for a man who treated me like royalty. The other was a group of co-workers I considered friends, and now it was as if I had been placed in a loyalty test I never asked for. My mind swirled with questions. Why was this happening? Why was it so hard for him to trust me? Wasn't our relationship about honesty and openness? Or was there an unspoken rule that demanded I pick sides? I understood he was hurt. I genuinely did. If situations were reversed, I'd likely feel the same way. But cutting ties entirely felt drastic. Friendship is a tricky dance. It's layered and complex, and frankly, I wasn't willing to sacrifice those relationships simply because my situationship was entwined in his mother's work life. Days turned into a tense standoff. Whenever we communicated, it felt like I was walking on eggshells. He wanted me to outright condemn the Negative Nancys, but how could I when we're all just people at the end of the day? My refusal to yield to his demands only made things worse. If you don't trust me to stand up for you, does that mean you really believe I wouldn't pick you in a dilemma? Your mother means a lot to me as well. But all that did was fuel the fire. After weeks of this emotional tug-of-war, I remember sitting down with a cup of tea one evening, feeling utterly spent. I took a deep breath, allowing the warmth of the tea to envelop me, hoping it might soothe the turmoil inside. But it didn't. Just then I had a realization. This wasn't merely about work gossip. It was about trust and self-identity in a relationship that was supposed to be fluid and uncomplicated. And so I took a stand. I reached out to Sam, my heart racing once again as I typed my thoughts, pouring out my feelings. I told him I couldn't answer an ultimatum that left me feeling questionable about my loyalty to him. I cherished our relationship, but the ultimatum felt like the stakes were too high, and I was unwilling to dismiss friendships I had formed long before he and I were ever together. And then silence. Each minute that ticked by felt like hours as I awaited his response, worry gnawing at my insides. But I also felt a weight lifted. I stood my ground. Whether Sam could accept it or not was up to him. So here I am, sharing this experience with you all. What would you have done in this situation? Would you pick sides? Or would you try to navigate the awkward space between friendships? Would you fight for love or hold on to the friendships that once meant so much to you? I genuinely want to hear your thoughts, because I'm still unraveling the threads of this emotional puzzle myself.